And so I'm delighted that, Rachel, you're on the Zoom with me here today. We know each other for a long time. And you have a fascinating career as a medical doctor, and you worked in very difficult circumstances in countries like Afghanistan and in Africa. And you witnessed lots of stuff there. At one point, you decided to go back to Holland and become, let's say, a national aid worker. From an international aid worker, you became like a national aid worker, right? And you've catered for, humanitarians, or basically for immigrants, people, living in refugee camps and asylums in the Netherlands. You provided medical care there. So over your career, you've been in the service of others and humanitarian aid, caregiving. So I think this is really, really wonderful to see. We could explore this question of unlimited, compassion and care, this pure impulse that we all have as human beings, who wish to help other people, who wish to serve other people, wish to take away suffering. At the same time, we can be in a context like the tragedy that we see now on our social media in Afghanistan, where everything falls apart and everything is becoming impossible. So it's between the edge of the pure impulse to help and a reality that is very, very difficult. And I'd like to explore, first of all, when you look at what's happening in Afghanistan, Rachel, now, where is your heart? What's happening? What do you witness? Where do you feel, what's happening with you? Having worked there, Afghani people, aid workers there, probably people are still trying to help there. So can you make a few comments on that?
Yes, thank you for having me here. I think it's an important topic for the audience as well. Yes, well, I've been in Afghanistan, that's already several years ago. But of course, in preparing for this webinar, I spoke with colleagues who are still working for Afghanistan. And yeah, watching the news also, it's very sad. I think everybody feels the same. It was not fully unexpected, but the speed with which Taliban took over surprised everybody, including the humanitarian aid workers that I spoke to. So it's really sad. It's a humanitarian crisis developing there. That's what you see. Some people are more a danger than others, and they try to escape. They need to be evacuated. That's what we see, of course, also in our home countries. But the population in Afghanistan, for certain, there's a lot of uncertainty still about the future, but for certain there will be economic crisis. The health system is at risk of collapse already. Afghanistan, of course, was already for many, many years country at war, poor country, fragile state, but now it really got from bad to worse. Heavily donor-dependent country. And the donors, so there's this Afghan Reconstruction Trust Fund, where all the donors put their money in for Afghanistan, and that is since many years. That's actually the money also going to health systems for education, infrastructure, agriculture, everything. That's administered by the World Bank. And with the government takeover, there's no recognized government yet. It's Taliban, and due to terrorism laws, etc., no terrorism financing, of course. So the funding has been stopped to Afghanistan. So that means, let me speak for the health sector, because I'm a health person, health worker. What we hear from the staff, what we see also, you can imagine that this health system, there's no more funding going to it. No salaries being paid, many facilities already closed. So it's a risk of collapse of the health system there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's very sad to see, because there's some improvement had been made over the past years. Of course, still the health indicators are very low, maternal mortality, literacy, etc. is still very low, but it was rising the past years. And now we're all afraid it will again be back 20 years.
Yeah. So it's not just a takeover of the Taliban, but it's also sort of a implosion of the healthcare system service, because it was donor dependent.
Because it's fully donor dependent, and there's no funding at the moment. Yeah.
So, okay, very good. And you as an aid worker, you know, former aid worker, how does that make you feel, if I may ask?
Yeah, well, speaking to the colleague, like yesterday, I spoke with an ex-colleague who's a program manager now with HealthNet, very much involved, and immediately I feel also the same drive, or it's hard to describe, but you feel like, oh, this needs to be done, this should be done, or this kind of, try to go into action mode.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what can you do? You cannot do anything, right? Or what's that sort of, it's interesting that translates into an action mode. And then what?
Yeah, and then what? So that is a bit frustrating. Yeah, so you're following the news also, you're following, well, listening to the colleague, for instance, was maybe quite concrete. He could, because I also asked him, how is it for you? And yeah, and then what? That is the question, but that is also, I think, a topic we should discuss now. What can you do?
Exactly.
Yeah, when you see the limited
you know,
humanitarian aid. Yeah.
What about the stark reality that, you know, of course, people like you and us, you know, we help and we can leave. You know, we go into those places, we do great work or not, but we try to do great work and then we leave. And then there are, of course, the beneficiaries, the local people who stay there, and then you have local national staff who also stay there. How do you deal with that? A sense of, I don't know, privilege or guilt maybe, or something. Does that play a role?
Exactly. Yeah. When I go back to the years I was in the field myself, this is played a big role. You know, you feel, I felt, let's speak for myself, I felt a heavy burden because there's so much to do, so many needs, and when you can actually do something, so that helps in the moment, and you can actually do something, feels useful also. But it's also heavy for yourself. But then I said to myself, oh, I shouldn't feel this, because compared to the beneficiaries, they have it much worse. Or you compare to national staff, as you said, they have expat, I can leave, I will leave at some point. So that is hard to deal with. I struggled with that when I was in the field.
Yeah, it created some tension.
You go on a plane, suddenly you're back there, but it's in your heart and your mind is still there, of course. You know the people and creates tension.
And of course, this is some years ago, and you moved on to working in the Netherlands and you know, you can, in totally different circumstances, of course. So how do you reflect on that tension, and how did you take care of that kind of
it's more also when
it seems like partly you bring the problem with you, you know, even if you go home, you still with the circumstances in a way, I understand, but at the same time you're gone, and so, and it doesn't involve a sense of guilt or privilege or something like that. Is that also part of the mixture?
While in the field you just get on with it, you're super busy also, you see what you do and why you do it, so that's quite clear. And at that time in the field I didn't have so many tools actually for self-care. That's why I feel this topic is so important. Of course, there are always some people in your team that you have a special connection to, and you can have some deeper conversations with. That helped me quite a lot, do some physical exercise, etc. But then when you leave the field, well, in my case, when I left the field and I was back in Holland, still working actually with Doctors Without Borders, but at the headquarters, then there was a bit more distance, a bit more space maybe, and I had this bigger questions coming back, like this injustice and the feeling that it's not enough what you do, it's never enough, and how can I have more impact, and how can I have the most impact, etc. And I saw around me also very talented humanitarian aid workers doing this for years. They became cynical, and I've done this, it doesn't work, and I really didn't want to become cynical. That was very clear. So I went also, when I was back in the Netherlands, I started a search basically for wisdom, trying to understand this, what you couldn't understand, these questions, where maybe there are answers. So basically it was search for wisdom for the bigger picture also, how to.
That's a nice way of saying wisdom for the bigger picture. That's an interesting way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
So to zoom out of the immediate problem and immediate need, and also the immediate impulse of care, sort of zooming out, like
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about that? And you seem to have found some of that and made some choices because you changed the direction.
Yeah. So why are these things happening? Questions like that, and why is this injustice? And then, I've tried several things, and for instance, meditation. I was very interested in that. Started meditation, and I went into more to the Buddhist path, Tibetan Buddhist path. I discovered, so I joined. So not only the meditation, not only the practice, but also I was looking for the wisdom. Answers basically behind that.
Can you say a little bit more about the wisdom, right? Like, because and the answers, because
looking back, actually I needed to accept, I think, a few things. I found a teacher, a Buddhist master, and he over the years, but he said a few things that really helped me. And in preparing for this webinar, I wrote down a few of those. So the things that I had to accept that apparently I didn't accept yet. Like he could say very clearly, this world is not perfect. And this world will never be perfect. You have to accept that. Yeah. It sounds very simple. Everybody will say, oh, yes, I know this, the world is not perfect. But to really, I had to really feel this world will never be perfect. That was something. And also that you do your very best. You really give everything you can. And then what happens after that, you have to accept also. Things are also out of your control. So that really helped me. And to be also affirmed that the goodness of the human beings. So the basic goodness, deep down, your true nature of a human being is good, actually. Your nature is love and compassion. So you see a lot of violence and hatred around you, but that is unnatural. So my teacher really said, that's unnatural. It doesn't feel right. Nobody wants to hurt another person. Your nature is. So that was a great reminder, basically. I knew this, but it wasn't, important.
I see. So it seems like, because you said earlier, you said you didn't want to become cynical. You saw people become cynical. Yeah. In a way, as a response also to the suffering, I think that's why people become cynical. There's too much suffering, and they say it's all bad, and it doesn't make there's no hope, no difference basically we can make, right? And you become cynical. But you said by accepting that's not a perfect world, you cannot change it, but you can still do something, right? You
do what you can to, you do what you can to help, but it's also important to know why you do it. That I discovered. So not fighting against something or from a fighting mode, but not why you want to help. Yes, you want to help, but from what motivation is it? So not from pain or not from suffering or not from the fighting, but from a real desire to help other people.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. That's wonderful. And then just because you said something quite important, of course, in those few sentences, but also the fact that basic human goodness, in spite of all the suffering that you see, there is this sense of faith, or how do you call it, of trust in that people will somehow take care of themselves, or that problems will be solved somehow. Is that
well, that the natural tendency of human beings is to help each other, and you see this every time also in a crisis. I'm sure you see it now also in Afghanistan, or with the COVID in the West. You see something bad happens, but then it also brings something good, and people help each other, and you see that's what I mean. And that's reassuring somehow.
Yeah.
Well,
it's wonderful that you found that, and I want to encourage this. We're a small group. We lost a few people because of the intruder. So if you want to, join the conversation by maybe sharing an experience you have or a question, because of course we talked about Afghanistan and your particular experience, Rachel, but maybe you recognized it in other circumstances as well. Like how to deal with this overwhelm and the complexity, the limitations, basically, the impossibilities of situations. There's this pure impulse, and you describe it very well. And even today, you when you talk about Afghanistan, you seem to have this impulse to help, right? And that's pure, there's nothing wrong. But then you need other skills. You need other levels of awareness, basically, and other skills. It's like this rough edge between empathy or willing to help, and then this rough edge towards something where you hit a wall, right? And that space is something I'd love to explore together here with us. How do we deal with that space, the rough edge between empathy and the upcoming impossibility that ultimately, if we don't manage that, it can also shut us down into cynicism. So anyone has that experience, or how do you relate it to your own experience in trying to help wherever you are in Western context or in a developing context?
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Sure. Anna,
yeah, I recognize it very much, what you're saying about this danger of becoming cynical. And also the danger of wanting to help too much. What I always try to do when I help people individually mainly, is to be very clear about everyone's, how shall I say it, own responsibility for their own life. And I think that's also on a bigger level important. And that you be clear where a problem is yours to pick up and help, and what is a problem which belongs to the person and the person should pick up, and where you could support, but where the person really should own that problem, so to say. I don't know if I'm clear enough, but I think that for me, that's very essential, that you do not step over that line, that you take problems from a person or also in an organization or whatever, because it makes them just dependent, and they will not take responsibility for making it a success. Because if it fails, it's your fault, you didn't help good enough. So, and when I think now of your description also of Afghanistan, and when you see the discussions around Afghanistan, there's also this thing about, hey, is it the responsibility of the people in Afghanistan to build their own country? And where is it our problem, and where is it their problem? I'm not saying that I'm in favor of just letting it to the Afghan people, but I think for me that's an essential line to find. Hey, where do we leave the responsibility to build the life you want to live, the way you want to live it?
Yeah, thank you. I think that is very well said. Rachel, you want to reflect on that? It seems to be part of similar to the zooming out and the bigger picture, and so you can see the voluntary, not the enforced limitations, but more somehow the voluntary limitations or borders that you draw.
I fully agree. Well, in the end, also let's go back to the Afghan example. Of course, the real change has to come from the people itself. Yeah. Afghanistan is its people and the natural environment. That's Afghanistan. But at the moment we're at a humanitarian crisis, really. So it's not a development situation. It's really a humanitarian crisis. So when I speak about the humanitarian crisis. I've worked also in those crises, not more the development phases. So I think at this moment it's humanitarian crisis, and help is needed. But ultimately, change has to come from the people itself. Always, change. You cannot change another person. Change always has to come from within, even within yourself. You can change yourself, but not another person. So I fully agree with you, but it's a more longer term. It has to come from the people. It was interesting to see also now that the military has been trained by foreign troops, Afghan military, and they didn't fight for their country now. We do not fully understand yet why, but maybe they're tired of so many years of already war and casualties, and they didn't fight for their country. No.
Any other questions? Yes, Jonathan.
If I may, I think that we are in no position to know what's going on in Afghanistan. But I think that exactly what Rachel mentioned and what Anna was talking about is what we call is a very strong debate in the humanitarian sector between, it's a discussion, it's rather not a debate, it's very heated, on risk transfer, on leaving and moving the risk to somebody else, normally to the national population. But there's also other side of it, of the responsibility of the international community when people are suffering. And the responsibility is not only to respond to suffering, because we all feel that drive that Sander is talking about, this need that Rachel mentioned, this innate bigger compassion and drive to help, but also the responsibility of part of the problem is created by us. So it's very, just leaving is not necessarily so simple. It's simple for us. It's not simple for those who are stayed behind. Of course, everybody wants to improve their life, and wants dignity. So I think that is the humanitarian mission. And the humanitarian mission is to save lives and help prevent further suffering for those who need it most. Yeah. So this is it's a very, very important, very interesting discussion. And it's really the heart of the humanitarian complexity today. Yeah.
But you draw, Chamatal, you bring in an even further, bigger perspective, of course, because in the case of Afghanistan, the crisis there is a result of decades and maybe even centuries of occupation and division and power games and colonialism. Like many humanitarian crises are not just natural disasters, right? They're human disasters created by political forces that have been set in motion decades ago, and that we, if you say we, but the Western world has co-created, at least, right? Mm-hmm. So that also brings up a level of guilt and cynicism.
Exactly.
That flows into the picture, which makes it more complex. And even me, I've never been in Afghanistan, but I've been in the region, and I feel very guilty about it. Like our culture has co-created this problem, so there's a sense of guilt. But at the same time, I love to bring this back to a practice, a collective practice of, okay, so there's this pure impulse that we all share. And then there's this rough edge where this bigger picture comes in with negatives like guilt and blame, hopelessness. And there's also what you speak so well to, both Anna and Rachel, of trusting human nature and recognizing the potential for every human being, including countries, regions, like cultures like Afghanistan, to somehow come back to some level of normalcy and flourishing, if ever. Right. So how that practice? So I'd love to again hear from you, maybe one or two people, to say how do you do that as a practice? That rough edge from where your own power stops, and then there's still space to move and explore. Anyone?
I think, sorry, I think there was an interesting point from Chamatal about the we. Because who's the we? Like you said, we created the damage, or we are responsible for a part of what's going on. Well, maybe not. I mean, I don't know what was my part in that personally. So maybe it's just to detach a bit from the we and act as oneself, and as a humanitarian, being able to do something, even if it's that bit. It's just a drop of water, maybe in the whatever is being done. Maybe it's detaching a bit from the we that helps to see the bigger picture, as there's so much dynamics and we's, right? And in the end, we can only do individual actions, I guess, even part as an organization.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that the micro in the humanitarian sector, we always talk about the grassroots change, and when you distill this we, and there's still the bigger picture, which you cannot attend to, you cannot grasp, you cannot deal with on the day-to-day basis and the day-to-day work and grind that you face. You go down to the micro, and the person you can help, and the work that you can do, really one bit at a time.
And maybe to add, you can also again zoom out, even maybe while you're in the field. Yes, humanitarian aid, you do what you can there on the spot with the beneficiaries, and even when you're it's limited. There are limits. Your body, your energy, your own capacity has limits. There's much more needed, and humanitarian aid is limited. But the compassion, the Buddhist, I really like the Buddhist definition of compassion. Maybe it's good to mention here. It's the wish for others and yourself to be free from suffering. The wish for others and yourself to be free from suffering. That is, of course, easy for humanitarian aid workers. Yes, of course, that is always there, and that is really unlimited. You don't want others to suffer, and especially humanitarian aid workers don't do it. So, yeah, just to bring that back to so you do what you can on the field, knowing it's limited. But the wish that others are free from suffering is unlimited, and that actually gives you inner power. Well, my experience, somehow it gives you some inner strength.
Can you explain it from your practice, like why? I know what you're saying, but it's just to explore it from a practice viewpoint. Why is that different from the impulse to help? What is the difference between, and that's the difference regarding empathy. Empathy is the willingness to help. And then what you talk about is like a wish that goes beyond that.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Empathy is more also, well, in my case, more that you really feel with the other person. You can feel, if you're sensitive, you feel the other's pain, really. And that is exhausting, that's draining, that's not healthy for you as a worker also. But it happens, so you have to train on that as well. But then compassion as this wish that others are free from suffering, that's somehow maybe more, that's so obvious to me. Of course, that was you don't even have to train that. I know there are a lot of practices to train compassion. No, you don't even have to train that. That is already actually, I think especially for humanitarian aid workers, that comes so natural.
But you said it is empowering. It's not.
Yeah,
it
gives you some courage or some power. Yeah. It's hard to explain really, but then it's maybe something like then somehow it's enough, because I had really struggled with this. It's not enough. It's never enough what you do, and then somehow it helps a bit on that. Maybe I'm just thinking.
But the wish is more expansive and even
unlimited.
Like your actions are limited, but the wish is there's no time limit and there's no space limit. That's what you mean, right? So everybody is included and forever. That it's more like an attitude rather than an action.
Yes, correct? And maybe it makes it easier to accept this, that it's limited humanitarian aid. The world will not be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Does that resonate? Is any comments on that? Yes, Stephen or Stephen.
And it's not on your shoulders. That's the difference. It's not on your shoulders or in your energy or in your body, but at the end, sometimes it's hard to.
Yeah, thank you, Marike. Yeah, so we had a few, we may come back to that in the practice, but very good. And Stephen, Stephen, you wanted to say something.
Sure. Yeah, similar point actually. I mean, I think that cultivating of compassion, especially if you start with self-compassion, is always very helpful, right? And can help to manage a bit those feelings of guilt as a humanitarian worker to some extent. And yeah, you're expanding out your capacity, as Rachel was saying. And I think it can be a little bit easier to do that because means suffering with, doesn't it, right? Compassion. So you are cultivating that empathy, but in a way that is nourishing. I think just because it's easy to turn that same attitude towards yourself, and some of those Buddhist practices, of course, that's the starting point. As Rachel, you were saying, I think. So a lot of that was one thing. I do think that it's nourishing in that way. Another part of it, though, a bit more tricky, because when we're looking at the wish to remove suffering from all beings, and also the causes of suffering. And then it's like, can be much more powerful in one sense if you're working in that context, like a Buddhist context. But then in the humanitarian context, that's quite interesting, because that kind of cause of suffering, either political or certainly kind of transcendental or something beyond the politics anyway, is a lot more difficult to engage with, and a little bit with the history of some kind of colonial types of bringing of what they saw as compassionate by bringing, you know, a new religion to other people, then it gets a bit complicated there. So I think there's on the personal level, that cultivating of compassion can be really transformative. But then, yeah, when we get to the causes, any types of causes of suffering, I don't really know what to say about that, except I think it's a really interesting debate, because it gets an interesting thing to think about that would help to see how can we make the most of it, because it gets into that the neutrality discussion in humanitarian work, but also gets into a bit, you know, to what extent can we bring a spiritual practice, Buddhism, for example, to humanitarian practice without mixing them up too much, right? And certainly when we're using those practices more broadly, like CBR is doing, you know, where's the defining line? Where do we kind of make the boundaries? So yeah, lots of interesting things about compassion.
Yeah. No, very good. So you talk about, Stephen, about the sort of holistic approach, and Rachel too. I mean, you bring in this wider perspective. Of course, things get more complicated and more fuzzy, but there is some benefit in the holistic approach if you know where you stand, your own limitations and all that. But you know, but then with this wish to be of service, you can explore the bigger context, and hopefully with some neutrality and without self-judgment and self-criticism, because that comes with it, you know, or blame, judging either others, like it's the Americans who have created this, or the communists who have created it, you know, or yourself, like we created it, or I have failed somehow or we as a Western society, we have failed.
It's a nice, so I was just wanting to pick up on that, because I thought it was a nice way to bring in the neutrality aspect. Like, you know, there's the kind of classic neutrality of a humanitarian sense, but bringing, like taking it as an analogy, then we're bringing the neutrality towards ourselves. So then you can be cultivating compassion for yourself, for other people, having a kind of a neutral approach, like it's okay to take care of oneself, even if other people are sort of experiencing suffering in a more obvious kind of a way.
I think this is very interesting, Stefan, because of I mean, neutrality also in the humanitarian sector, you know, are you neutral like MSF, or are you neutral like the Red Cross? So, and both are neutral. And I think this is a very interesting, even taking that and then bringing it to ourselves. And we really need to, in order to work on that and cultivate our compassion, we need to define for ourselves, where do we lay? Like, where are we in this spectrum? And what does it mean for us?
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, before we go, I'd like to segue back into a meditation practice, and hopefully one that is not interrupted this time. But before that, I'd like to offer Rachel time to make a closing comment, or a wish, if you like, for us and yourself included. You know, like what is the biggest learning or takeaway that you'd like to give us, having listened to this and having you know, inspired us to a high degree.
Sorry, Sander, I missed part of your question because can you repeat? Yeah.
Well, do you have a wish, a parting wish for us here, all of us
parting
together?
Wish.
Yes.
Well, maybe to go back to the beginning practice, what you said, the breath is always there. And to be aware of your awareness, that really helps. That's always with you. When you're in the field, that really, I think, helps. And maybe another thing I would like to end with is, well, I had to learn to stay also centered in myself, centered in your body. The breath helps with that. centered in your own mind, not to go too much out to the other and then losing yourself somehow, to stay centered, to stay grounded in yourself. So not so much outward oriented when you're in such a complex situation, but actually at any time. Stay centered, stay grounded, be more of the witnessing. That helps, and it can help you maybe to be as a human person in this complex life, in complex situations. And
beautiful.
I haven't reached it yet, but that is I think the practice. Yeah.
Yes, if anyone reached it here, please step out of the Zoom and come forward. At Garrison Institute, we pretend to have the answer with all kinds of tools, but that's not really true.
We're human beings.
We're human beings, but we have tools and practices, so we can
Yes.
evolve, and learn, and we can always learn. Yeah, that's not a given. I think that we all refer to. You can learn, and that's this. Yeah, I like that phrase of neutrality, where there is no bad and good, but there is learning. It's like there is awareness and there's learning and there is a way somehow.
Yeah, and there's potential, a great potential.
Yeah,
human beings.
Yeah, without denying the difficulties, but it's just another perspective. So thank you. With that, I'd love to bring all of you just back to a moment of yourself, like you say so powerfully, the centeredness back to your body, because we're a little bit, when you talk and think, your energy goes up in your brain area, the neocortex area, but that's just a little part of our whole body and a part of our capacity. So just go back to the bigger capacity that we have and that we are, our body, our whole nervous system, our emotional system. Just connect briefly with your body, how it sits, and then feel all the energies flowing up and down, left and right. And your heart at the center, the heartbeat. And the heart is this incredible source of potential to share and to take care and to connect with others, with the world, with nature. It's always there, that organ or capacity to go out and help and serve. And we should never lose that. That's a given. Care, compassion is a given. Just like awareness and breath, care is a given, and we should never lose that. And we can only grow and expand that. And we can also, as long as we are centered, as long as we have found our core, our center, our neutrality, if you like, your field of awareness, then caring can grow also and expand, like the wish that Rachel referred to, the wish that everybody, every being may be free of suffering, and expand it in terms of space, all sentient beings, and time. You can't solve problems immediately. There will be next generations, there will be next time, space, for which we are planting seeds right now. And that sense of care can grow into compassion. The wish, I think, is, you can call that more like it's more compassion, technically speaking. Because it goes beyond the immediate impulse to help. It's more reflective, and it goes into space and time. At the same time, it can also turn, as Stephen said, it can be turned inward. It can include ourselves. We can be we can be object of compassion ourselves. We're not just the subject, we're also the object. Which is the practice of self-care and self-love, and that can expand, just like light Because light carries light, and light can expand. You know, light can enlighten darkness, and darkness is suffering. So we can switch on the light inward and outwardly, and then it lightens up all the suffering, touched by the light of care and compassion. And we can really throw our full selves into that as well. We are deserving that light of self-care, of care. As we're ultimately instruments ourselves, we are instruments that can bring light and care into the world, but we should be able to switch on the light ourselves. Nobody can do that for us. But it's a given, it's there. We have it, so just take a few deep breaths to really make that visceral experience of bring care into your heart, into your whole body, your whole system. Your arms, your legs, your limbs, your friends, your family, your community. And then slowly, before we close, bring it to a wish. Bring it into, as Rachel suggested, bring it into a wish that you'd like to make for whatever suffering you are witnessing or which you're experiencing. It could be big, could be small. Some sort of dedication, the energy that we have created ourselves within our Zoom. Positive energy of care and compassion gets a certain direction as a ripple in water rippling out. And imagine the recipient of that ripple is actually receiving it. And for a moment, his or her or their problem is resolved, is disappeared, and there is happiness and well-being. It's imagined, but it's on the level of wish, it is a reality. And then come back to yourself and congratulate yourself and be complimentary. You know, you've done something useful in the last few minutes, in the last hour. And thank you all. Thank you, Rachel, in particular. We didn't talk too much about your current work with COVID, and if immigrants in the Netherlands. It's also one of those, mind-blowing, challenges that we're facing as humanity. But each one of you, I'm sure, in your world, in your work, you are facing this, an element, a part of the bigger spectrum. And I wish you good luck with that, and lots of care and self-care and success in your work and in your life. And we hope to stay in touch. Not only next month, but also in between, if you have questions or if you want to reach out with experiences and just share them. Bernadette, already you shared something on the email, which is very nice to share. We'd love to hear back and have a sense of community, because we're in this, so that we're in this, we're in this together, right? It's not easy, the world, but it helps if we're a little bit of a community that can support each other. So thank you. See you next week. Sorry, next month.